Hey everybody, it's Wojo. Today you guys are going to take a look at systems of equations that we can write from a story. So we've been solving systems of equations using substitution, elimination, and even graphing them. But I've just been giving you the equations, and I want you to know that these equations come from real-life type situations. And so today's work is a chance for you guys to practice how we can take a real-life world situation and model it using systems of equations. And so today I'm going to just ask you to try some of these problems. They're going to be a little bit different. I just want you to go through and try some of them. We're going to work together a little bit on our own. And so I just want to go through a couple to show you kind of the way I think about it, then have you guys try a few of these as well. So obviously the first thing you want to do is read through the story and get a sense of it. This one is about Lee and Christopher. They work at a dry cleaners. It talks about the speed in which they can iron shirts, and it says Leah can iron 25 shirts per hour and Christopher can iron 15 shirts per hour. They work to combine 13 hours and iron 265 shirts. It says write a system of equations that could be used to determine the number of hours worked and the number of hours Leah worked and the number of hours Christopher worked. And then this is kind of one of the most important parts. It says define the variables that you use to write the system. So remember, the variable is going to be our unknown. So if it's a system of equations, it looks like there's going to be two unknowns. And those two unknowns are how many hours Leah worked and how many hours Christopher worked. The unknowns are always going to be what it's basically asking us to look for. So it says use it to determine the number of hours Leah worked and the number of hours Christopher worked. So those are the two things that we're trying to find. So whatever they're asking you to find, that's going to be our variable, and that's what we're going to start with. Now we're going to have to make a decision on what we call those. So it says use an equation that could determine the numbers of Leah worked. So if we're thinking about hours Leah worked, we could use H for hours, but then we'd have to use H again for Chris's hours, and we don't want to use the same letters twice. So to tell them apart, let's use L for Leah's hours and C for Chris's hours. And again, you could probably pick any variable you want, but they're going to be different because they're different hours. And so we said L is going to stand for the amount of hours Leah worked. So not the rate, not how much she works, but the number of hours she worked. Now again, I know that because that's what it's asking us to find. So whatever it asks you to find, that's going to be your variable. C is going to be the number of hours that Christopher worked. And so that's going to be one of the most important things that we have to look for right away is defining our variables. So anywhere we see an L, we'll know that represents the number of hours Leah worked. Anywhere we see a C, we'll know that represents the number of hours Christopher worked. And then I just kind of go back and read through the story, and anywhere it talks about hours that Leah works, I'm going to replace it with an L. Anywhere it talks about number of hours Christopher worked, I'm going to say C. So if I start here, I look for math just like we did before. So if it's math, we're going to write it. If it's not math, we're going to ignore it. So this is not math. Lee and Christopher work at dry cleaners ironing shirts. There's no real math there, so gives us some context, but it doesn't help us with our equation. But here comes some math. She can do 25 shirts per hour. And I know that how many shirts Leah can do per hour, we're going to call L. So 25 shirts per hour, I'm going to do is 25L. She can do 25 shirts for every number of hours she worked. And, so remember that's going to be our plus symbol. So and Christopher can iron 15 shirts per hour. So if I said he can do 15, but that's Chris's, so I can say 15 shirts per hour. That's 15C. Now I'm going to have to set it to equal to something. Now this one is how many shirts per hour they can do. So if Leah did 1 hour and Chris did 1 hour, that would be 40 shirts. So I know that this total is going to be how many shirts they did. It's how many per hour, how many per hour. And so when I look here, it gives me two combinations. It says they combine 13 hours and iron 265 shirts. So I have to make a decision. Is this going to be equal to 13 or is it going to be equal to 265? And I make that determination based off of what this is telling me this represents. This is how many shirts they can do per hour. So I know it has to be how many shirts they do. So I'm going to say that's equal to 265. The harder, I think, equation comes when I have to look for the second one. And basically, there's no other math. So I look for the math. That was the math. That was the math. Here is the other math. It just doesn't necessarily look like the typical math we said. It says Leah and Christopher worked a combined 13 hours. So that means if we added up Leah's hours and Christopher's hours, it would equal 13 hours. So when you look at that, you might not see math in that, but if you think about it, Leah's hours worked is L, and that's plus. Christopher hours worked is C. That's going to combine to give me 13. So I could say L plus C, so Leah's plus Christopher's, is going to equal those 13 hours total. And so if we had this story problem and we wanted to solve it, we could use this equation. Now this looks like an equation that we could do elimination. We would probably have to multiply the bottom equation by 25 or negative 25 to get those to cancel. We're not asking you to solve today, we're just asking you to set up the system. And so what you're going to do is go through the words and get a sense of what they're trying to find. We're going to define our variables, and we're going to write our equations. And then you'd submit your answer, and it'll let you know if you're right or wrong. It'll talk about those. So it looks like if I scroll, oh, I can't scroll up enough to show you. There we go, that I did get it right. And then you can move on to the next one. If you get it wrong, that's okay. I don't mind that you guys get them wrong today. But when you get them wrong, what I want you to do is I then want you to read through how they thought about this, because the more you see of these, I think the easier it'll get. So I'll have you just read through the ones you make mistakes on. And so don't be afraid to try them and make mistakes. Your grade is not going to be based off of how many you get right. It's just going to be based off of did you put your time in, just to make sure that you're good to go. So if I go to new problem, you're going to notice all the problems are kind of the same. They're going to ask you or give you a word problem, ask you to define the variables and write the system. And so you really should read the whole thing. But one of the things you want to look for when you're reading it is what is it asking for in the end? What is it they want us to find? Because that's what your variables are going to be. So it says write a system of equations that could be used to determine the price. So I'm looking for price of a bag of popcorn and a price of a pretzel. And so I know one of these is going to be the price of popcorn and one is going to be the price of a pretzel. And normally I would say, okay, well, P for price or P for popcorn, P for price, P for pretzel, but they both all start with the letter P. So it doesn't necessarily matter what you call these. You could call it P for popcorn and R for pretzel or L for pretzel. Or what you can't do is call it P again, because they have different prices, and so they have to have different variables. So it doesn't matter what letter you pick there. It'll allow you to put anything in. But I'm going to let P be popcorn and R be the price of a pretzel. And then I'm going to go back through, and anywhere it talks about price, I'm going to use popcorn, I'm going to use the letter P. And anywhere I could use the price of a pretzel, I'll use the letter R. So if I read through this, I'm going to look for math. Claire went into a movie theater. Okay, so that's not necessarily math, but here comes the math. She bought 9 bags of popcorn and 2 bags of pretzels. So if P was popcorn and R was pretzels, how would I show 9 popcorn and 2 pretzels? And it cost a total of $80. So let's start with 9 popcorn and 2 pretzels. So I'd come down here, 9 popcorn, because I called P popcorn, plus 2 pretzels. Cost a total, so that's my equals, $80. So that's one of my 2 equations. And then I would have to look and see what other math they gave me. So this one says Melanie went into the same movie theater and she bought 7 bags of popcorn and 4 pretzels costing $72. So now I'm just going to kind of do the same thing. And I'm going to say, all right, 7 popcorns and 4 pretzels. So 7 popcorns. So I come down, 7P for 7 popcorns and 4 pretzels. And that totaled $72. Write a system of equations. That's what we just did. Define the variables you used. We defined P, again, for popcorn, R for pretzel. And again, when you submit your answer, it'll ask you, are you sure? Yep, we'll say yes. And it's going to let us know how we did. Now, they might have picked different ones. So you notice when their explanation, they said let B equal the price of a bag of popcorn, which makes sense, B for bag. We picked different variables and we still got it right. It doesn't matter the variable you pick. It just matters that you pick the variable, then you have the right equation. So I'm going to ask you guys, like I said, to go through and spend some time working on these. We'll talk about them in class as well. I just want you to see all the different ways that you can model real life situations with systems. Since we've been solving them, it's nice to know that you can solve real life problems with them as well. And then we'll talk more about them in class. As always, you can email me any questions and we can talk about them in class as well. Hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you soon.